welcome back. You know, when folks think about STEM, they think of NASA as the pinnacle of success. So we decided, let's invite an astronaut into the studio. But I'm not going to ask the questions. The Malden High School robotics team is going to ask the questions. And here with us is Dr. Jeanette Epps. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, it's nice to be here and see these students working so hard on robotics. That's awesome.
In the last 5 years, the Cannabis Control Commission has granted 249 final licenses and 122 marijuana retailers have opened in the state. And they've been making money here. Since November 2018, sales have grossed $45 billion, generating more than $90 million in sales tax alone. Ukraine says an evacuation is planned for people still in the city of Mariupol. The country's general staff announced earlier today that Russia is fighting for full control of the area. Government officials say about 100,000 people remain in Mariupol.
Morning, we're following breaking news here on Boston 25. History being made in the city of Boston. Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Flanagan.
And I'm Crystal Haynes. City Council President Kim Janey is being sworn in as the new mayor of Boston as we speak, after Mayor Marty Walsh's departure to Washington. And certainly this is a historic moment. Kim Janey will become the first woman and the first black person to lead the city.
But Crystal, certainly a powerful and historic day here in the city of Boston.
Absolutely, Chris. You know, I got off the phone with Mayor Yvonne Spicer, who's the first black mayor of Framingham, you know, just before this swearing-in ceremony. And she talked about the unique perspective that Janey brings to this position. And Janey spoke to that in her speech just a few moments ago, talking about being bused into Charlestown, as you mentioned, about cleaning bathrooms as a teenage mother in order to afford college, to Smith College, and then, of course, that really being part of her trajectory to political office. But then she also talked about bringing that perspective to address the challenges for the city of Boston that she's going to be facing, I mean, frankly, since day one, and she has as president of the Boston City Council. But take a look at the inside of the theater. Forget about it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. It already is Christmas and the holiday season here inside the Wang Theater. And of course, a perfect place for this classic movie. And you already know one of the most famous scenes from it.
Driving the message, making sure that the message remains grounded in injustice and activism for all people of color, and especially those who are the victims of police brutality.
Stop defunding school education and start focusing more on our systems.
It's not that we're bashing the police, we're bashing the system at which they derive from.
There's a lot of police officers who say they have to take the job of like a social worker, of an educator. And so if we take the resources that...
All right, the feeling is electric. Now at 5, 1 down, 3 to go for the Celtics. The team on the brink of a blowout when they surge back to beat the Warriors in a dramatic Game 1 of the NBA Finals.
Another weapon found at a local high school, and police say a 16-year-old is now facing charges after he was caught with a loaded gun on his waist.
Do something. Just do something. For God's sake.
Enough is enough. President Biden pleads with Congress to take action on gun control legislation. His message to the American public in this rare primetime address.
All right, good Friday morning, everybody. It may be early, but we are feeling good after the Celtics come from behind win last night. Thanks for being with us. I'm Heather Hedgedas.
I'm Crystal Haynes. You know what? We have one more unsettled day of weather before the weekend brings in some pretty good stuff.
Yeah, looking forward to the sunshine.
Yes.
We really haven't had too much of that in the past couple of days. Boston 25 News meteorologist Sherry Spears here with the hour-by-hour forecast.
All right, time now. Coming up on 5:06, and we are also following breaking news out of Boston where police are searching for a gunman in connection with a late-night shooting in the city. This was the scene on Fenelton Street just after 10 last night, and you can see a lot of evidence markers on the ground there and crime scene tape surrounding the area. Police say the victim was taken to the hospital with life-threatening injuries. Well, extra police are expected at a charter school in Chelsea this morning after a 16-year-old brought a loaded gun to school. So it happened at the Phoenix Charter Academy just hours before graduation night.
Officials say that the teen was arrested after school administrator noticed the Smith & Wesson 9mm gun was loaded on his waist.
For the first time since her historic win, Boston 25 News is sitting down one-on-one with Boston Mayor-elect Michelle Wu.
She is now just over a week away from officially taking office, and she tells Boston 25 News anchor Haynes, new at 6, she has a lot of big plans for the city.
I sat down with the first woman of color to be elected mayor of Boston in 200 years about what her focus will be just 8 days out from being sworn in. Michelle Wu is making history and ready to make some big changes, including fulfilling her promise of a free tea for all in a Green New Deal Boston, both things requiring state and federal cooperation.
So how are you going to get everyone on board, pardon the pun, to sign up and get these things actually done? Because it's one thing to make a campaign promise and sign up coalitions. It's another thing to have folks be able to get on the green line for free.
Of course, these will be involved specific conversations with partners at all different levels of government.
Is this something that you've already had meetings on the books with Governor Baker, with other folks on the federal level to start?
No, plenty of time to get into policy after the new administration is sworn in.
One policy causing some controversy, the city's mask mandate.
Boston has a pretty low positivity rate right now, but the mask mandate remains in place. Is there a number you want the city to hit before you consider lifting the mandate?
We have had some of those conversations internally just with the briefings and the transition meetings. We are going to be developing a set of metrics, and I look forward to working with our public health experts internally and partners around the city to get to that level of specificity.
My conversation with Wu just 8 days before she takes office turned to the homeless encampment on Mass Ave and Melnia-Cass Boulevard, where our crews have seen open drug use and violence.
What are you planning to do that might be different from acting Mayor Kim Janey?
We have underutilized city buildings, publicly owned buildings that are empty. There are vacant hotel rooms. We need to be providing low threshold supportive housing for folks who need that treatment and need those spaces. It can't be a matter of simply trying to clear an area and perpetuating the harms that we've already seen.
Wu has already faced sharp criticism over her plan to reallocate funds earmarked for the police department and use them for public health services.
This is a conversation about how we link public safety and public health and provide the services that our residents need in these moments of crisis.
How do you get the police unions on board with that, with change?
We're already piloting this approach in the city of Boston, and there are partner cities across the country who are showing that this not only meets residents where they are, delivers better services, and also reduces the need for those overtime dollars.
Wu says she's building her team for City Hall to look exactly like the city of Boston. For our full interview, go to the website boston25news.com. I'm Crystal Haynes, Boston 25 News.
Crystal, thank you.
Government and private organizations studying those disparities say despite the need, African Americans are much less frequently included in research. Masculine stereotypes and racial bias make that especially true for men of color, who are often silent about their struggles. I spoke with a Boston group that's trying to move men to healing.
Growing up in Dorchester, going through the tough times in the late 80s, early 90s as a black man, I got pulled over several times. And no one would really understand that other than a black man.
When developer Corey Thompson moved back home to Boston, he was looking for a way to reconnect to the community. His search led him to Brothers Building, a weekly men's group founded by community organizer James Mackey.
We have one goal, to improve holistic wellness one black man at a time. And holistic wellness for us means making sure that we're taking care of ourselves mentally, physically, spiritually, social and emotionally, financially, the whole black man.
According to the CDC, black men are 40% less likely to access mental health treatment than white men. They also have a suicide rate 4 times higher than black women.
A little over 10 years ago, I lost my son. And I don't think I truly grieved until I was in a men's group, this particular men's group, because it's hard for a black man to really show vulnerability.
When we have our calls or when we meet in person, we find time to meditate. How often do you hear about black men in general having the opportunity to just put pause on life?
The American Psychiatric Association found the number of black men going into medical school is on the decline. CDC data points to systemic racism contributing to poor mental and physical health outcomes for people of color. It's another driving force in the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement and calls for police reform.
The drip, drip, drip of lost opportunities because of who you are, the drip, drip, drip effect of people looking at you in fear, the drip, drip, drip effect of not being able to be yourself.
But Brothers Buildings gives you coping mechanism, gives you that opportunity to relieve that stress, gives you that opportunity to say, you know what, these systems continue to oppress me, I'm not going to allow it. We're going to stand up and fight against these systems. Enough.
Brothers Building has also begun to hold forums and rallies to support racial equity legislation. It's common knowledge Boston mothers signed their newborns up for a waiting list 8,000 names long for just 300 slots per year. But more than 50 years after METCO began, some students tell us racial tensions in school hallways are still a major issue. That has some asking if the price for school integration is too high for these young people.
It was $635. And my mother is bringing my brother and I to Boston.
Every morning across the state.
6:28. Gotta keep going now.
3,100 Boston kids are waking up.
I was up since 5.
Commuting for more than an hour on buses and trains.
Studying all night for my AP Gov test. The big one, the one that counts.
All to integrate 33 suburban schools.
Yeah, pray for me.
They're going to say it was a sacrifice. It wasn't always a rosy experience. Some people say it's not necessarily our kids' jobs to educate white people about, the struggle or about their experiences, but I see it a little bit differently.
METCO started in 1966. The voluntary busing program aimed to provide inner-city Boston students of color better access to schools and resources. 52 years later, the 4-year graduation rate for students in METCO is roughly 30% higher than students in Boston public and charter schools. The same Harvard report showed the college enrollment rate was also 30% higher. But the price for progress has been high. Boston 25 News has been documenting incidents of racism aimed at METCO students for years. And long commutes are the least of it, these Malden High School METCO students tell me.
The use of the N-word.
They would just bring up the N-word or jokingly ask, oh, can I have the N card? And I would just always say, that's just not okay.
But it still hurts, regardless if it's used as a joke or in all seriousness.
METCO is a $22 million state-funded program. Districts apply to give their students a lesson in the value of diversity. Wayland School Superintendent Arthur Unobsky says some of those lessons are hard-won.
We do need to continue to grow in our ability to sort of understand what they bring to the table and nurturing that.
Newton school leaders tell me inclusion only works if you talk about race in the classroom and in professional development spaces.
At our middle schools now, we have classes and sessions on microaggressions, which are something that people face, particularly in a predominantly white environment.
But city leaders are challenging METCO's mission for a modern-day Boston. The district now has a $1.6 billion school budget. Education Chair Anissa Asabi-George says there are enough resources to keep students and their talents in their home communities.
A handful of kids in a suburban school, it's not going to diversify that school experience.
METCO Director Millie Arbaje Thomas says the program is changing. The application is now an online lottery, making the selection process more transparent. They're going to provide diversity training for teachers and administrators. And Arbaje Thomas wants METCO directors to come from METCO and not the host district.
I want the city of Boston to understand that desegregation is necessary. The isolation in the suburbs when it comes to race is a problem, and METCO is providing a solution to that problem in a very small way.
The students I spoke to say even if nothing changes,
any hardships they have to face are worth it because they've gained the ability to integrate into any environment and not be intimidated. I spoke with some METCO alumni about their challenges in integrating into suburbs nearly 20 years ago. Go to Boston25news.com for that web extra.